But when we start talking about angels, we are basically talking about beings of light. We are not talking about solid beings. Yes, they can solidify a body and take a human form when they need to, either male or female, as a child, as an old man on the street, as a visitor to your home, as a sudden guys that literally show up when you have a flat tire on the road and they're all dressed in white and they change your tire and then suddenly they vanish. And there are all sorts of stories. In fact, there are about 30 stories in this book from people who've had their own firsthand experiences with angels or some kind of miraculous appearance of a being that came up out of nowhere in answer to prayer, necessity, deep suffering, and the invitation for from the human being, and that would be us, to invite these divine messengers in. So when we start talking about who angels are, first, I think if we look from the higher perspective, of course, we hear about them in history, we hear about them in the Bible, we hear about them in other religions as well. Most people don't know that these winged beings, light beings, are talked about in a lot of the Eastern and even Persian religions, as well as the Abrahamic religions of Christianity and Judaism and the Muslim religion. But they've been known for thousands of years. And this gets into a deeper conversation about who they really are. And certainly while is quite possible that some of, let us say, the gods and goddesses or extraterrestrials that visited our planet were mistaken as angels because of their immense power. If we go high enough, we actually find that there actually are beings that align with the definition that we think of today as angels. And so part of this is a conversation about nomenclature. And but nomenclature is words, basically syntax. So there are both extraterrestrials or star beings, some of which are good, some of which are bad, some of which are enlightened, some of which are amazing, some of which are teachers for humanity. And some of them have been mistaken as angels, but there are actually real angels. And this particular book, even though, as Neil knows, I can talk about the extraterrestrials all day long, this book is really about the light beings from the higher realms that we think of as real angels. When we start talking at a deeper level about all of this, ultimately, each of us is a spark in the body of God. All of life is a manifestation of the Great One, and there are different names for the Great One. Some call it God, some call it Atum. That's what the Egyptians called it, Atum, Atum. Some call it Sugmad. Some think of it as Allah or Jehovah or Yahweh. These are different names. Now, if we just, whether or not those names came forth at a time of extraterrestrials and misunderstanding, the people that are praying to those beings today, I'm sure, intend to be praying to, the divine that is beyond gender. It contains everything within its body. And so all of the dimensions, all of the worlds, all the galaxies, all of us are contained within the body of that one. But the one, of course, has manifested itself in order to create the dimensions and to create the planets and the solar systems and the suns and the galaxies and to populate them. So all of these beings have the spark of life within it, whether it's a planet, it's a sun, it's a kitty cat, or it's a human being, or it's a star being. Okay, we all have that divine spark. Otherwise, we wouldn't be alive. People call that, the breath of God, or the Shekinah, or the Holy Spirit. Different names for that breath of the Spirit of the divine that inhabits each one of us. And of course, we are souls. So soul is animated by spirit. Spirit and soul are different. Souls come from spirit, but we are animated. So this is why, when we leave this body is no longer animated. The soul has departed from this body. But the soul exists beyond the physical world, and it moves up then into the higher dimensions unless it gets stuck as a ghost or something. So when we talk about angels, basically we're talking about beings of light that exist at the higher levels who have not really come into the human form. As we come down from the ocean of love and mercy, from which everything comes, or what could be called the 0 point field, or the quantum field, or the universal field. We have all these names for it in science today, which is exciting. The soul is so pure, it can't really participate in any dimension without a body. So it takes on a soul body in the soul plane. We can call that the 7th plane, but people have different numbers. We take on a spiritual etheric body in the 6th dimension. And in those levels, we are functioning really as beings of light. We are functioning, we're able to hear the music of the spheres all the time, the sound current that literally creates everything, the audible life stream, the word as it's called. We're able to hear it, and we know where to go, what to do, and how to serve. So we are actually operating at that point in our evolution as angels in service to the divine. Angels actually invoke laws. They act as laws or principles. In other words, they're working in accordance with cosmic law, and they don't break cosmic law. Eventually, though, the soul comes down after billions of years of learning to access its co-creative abilities and serving in a divine way. It comes down into the causal plane. The causal plane is above this plane, as is the mental plane, as is the astral plane. It comes down into the causal plane, and there it receives a causal body. This body becomes the repository for all the past life records, or all the what would be the future life records at that point, of every single soul. That's where your soul records exist. And that's where I'm able to look at your records and see who you are. And then I'm able to go above that level into the higher levels, where I see how we come down originally as an angel. In other words, one who is completely aligned with spirit. So it takes about 5 million years for the causal body to form. And then we get a mental body in the 5th dimension. We get an ego. And eventually we make our way slowly after millions of years into the 4th dimension, the astral plane, where, in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th dimension, these are worlds of form. In India, they call them rupa worlds of form, where there are temples and cities and mountains and lakes, and we have some kind of a body, although at those levels we're vibrating at a much higher level. And then eventually we make our way where we get the mental body, the astral body, the emotional body, and then we get the physical body. And that's where we are today. We're down here in the physical world. When we drop our physical body, we move up into the astral plane. And depending on the level of consciousness we've attained, it depends on what level of the astral we go to. Do we go to the religious heavens? There are definitely all the religions of all the worlds, from the Egyptian to the, Greek, golden fields, to the fields of the blessed, to the Christian heaven, the Muslim heaven. Listen, God will meet us wherever we are. The divine is happy to meet us wherever our level of consciousness is. But the higher level of consciousness you have, the higher you yourself are able to go when you transcend into these higher worlds. Now, part of what I teach and what I study is something called soul travel or soul journey work, where while we're still living in the physical body, we can learn to project our consciousness and have experiences in these higher levels. And if you're interested in that kind of study, you can go to a website called the Way of Truth mysteryschool.org. That would be a cool thing. And you can find out all about it. And you can also go to my website, Tricia McCannon.com. And there's I don't talk about the Way of Truth on there, but I certainly talk about these principles in the Mystery School, the Phoenix Fire Mystery School, the online classes that I teach. So this is something that if you're really drawn to awaken your own divine nature, this is something that you can study and you can learn to do while you're still living in the physical world. And you don't have to wait till you die to really find out and have some of these mystical experiences for yourself. But angels are in service They are beings who have not taken on the mental body or the astral body or the physical body. They have feelings, yes, but they are so emanating and wrapped in the field of unity consciousness and unconditional love, that the feelings that they have are through the heart energy of divine unity consciousness. In other words, they are able to see from their perspective that no matter where we humans are in life, no matter how asleep at the wheel or suffering or sad or in grief or in conflict with ourselves or others, they know that in each one of us there is that divine spark. And so their presence and their appearance in our life is all about opening our hearts and our consciousness to love ourselves, to heal ourselves, to forgive ourselves, and to step more fully into the knowledge that with all of our flaws and imperfections down here, we are still a divine being. We are a being of light. And the more we can awaken to that, then the more we step into our wholeness, our happiness, our joy, and our deeper purpose in being on this earth. Part of our purpose, part of my purpose in teaching, part of Neil's purpose in having the portal to ascension is to bring each one of us to a place of awakening, self-awakening and self-love. And by loving ourselves, even though we're not perfect down here and we have our little human foilables, we begin to have compassion and empathy for others and to love them, even though they're not perfect. And that is really at the heart of what the angels are about and why they come into the world to remind us. Now, there are different kinds of angels, and I talk about many different kinds in this book, from the warrior angels to the guardian angels to the healing angels, the messenger angels. There are many, many different kinds, and I've experienced many. They're angels of creativity. There are angels of inspiration. They're angels that are primarily focused on knowledge or wisdom. They're angels that act as guardians at the temples of golden wisdom and the Akashic library temples. There are angels that work to oversee the muses. And the muses are an aspect of the angelic kingdom that is there to inspire each and every one of us in particular ways. And it could be through music or poetry or song or writing or sculpture or the creation of beautiful peace parks or the creation of anything that's uplifting. And whenever I write a book, I always call in my team. And it's been interesting, you know, when I wrote the book on the lost years of Jesus, um, the team that came in were all these beautiful solar lords, these profound male aspects of the divine that had incarnated to bring wisdom to the world. When I did the book on Return of the Divine Sophia, who came in were all these goddesses, all these beautiful feminine aspects. And I, you know, each of my books has about 100 illustrations. And so they would literally come in when I was drawing their pictures and dwell my body and help me to draw them. This team, of course, was a team of angels, as you can imagine. That's really who was behind this book. And I'm always profoundly grateful for these creative teams. I wrote a book called The Angelic Origins of the Soul. And that was a very interesting team. It was 4 angels and then 1 master. And he was kind of a bit of a skinny, irascible master. I wasn't sure how much I related to him, but the angels were all different. There was a healing angel who was dressed in green. His name was Hunter. There was like a golden angel that had to do with like radiance, like the sun. He was exquisite. He was all about the heart energy of coming forward and radiating out that field and putting that vibration literally into the book. And that's one of the things is when you start working with the angels, they will literally come in. I mean, I can sometimes feel them even like now that we mention it, standing behind me, sometimes the smell will come in like baby powder. It's a sweet smell. You know that they're there. Sometimes you feel them touch you on the shoulder, or you just literally feel their presence in the room with you. Because angels they can speak to you. They can speak to you telepathically. Many of you may have had an experience of having your name called aloud. I don't know if you've had that, but when that happens, literally, you turn around and you don't see anybody there. That's your guides. One of the things I talk about in this book is the importance of us inviting them in, because angels work through invitation. I think they have a tough job. I mean, imagine a job where you're not seen, you're not heard, and you're not paid attention to, and you're having to honor the free will of the person that is your charge for that lifetime. And of course, they may be making all sorts of, crazy decisions and not listening at all. Um, a couple of things. I see Neil's put some things on the screen about how to get this book. You can certainly order it through Amazon, and probably in a couple of days, you'll be able to order it through my website, triciamccannon.com. But one of the best places to get it is through the publisher, and her name is SacredStories.com. And her name is Tricia McCannon. She's a lovely, lovely woman. And she has launched this incredible series called Common Sentience. And the idea behind it is that these experiences that people have, whether it's shamanism or angels or meditation or nature or ascension, they're not, random, or only, 1% of the population is having them. Many, 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 many millions of people across the world are having these experiences. So Patricia decided to do this wonderful Common Sentience series of books where she chooses an illuminary, a major author, like Steve Farmer did the one on animals, and he's wonderful. I think Joanne or Sister Jenna did the one on a meditation. A lovely woman named Anna Marie did the one on nature. William Henry's going to do the one on Ascension. Our wonderful friend Neil Gaur is going to do the one on sound, because that's one of his passions, is sound healing and an awareness of that frequency underneath everything. So you can go to SacredStories.com and you can see all the books. Mine, I think, is the 4th one that's been published in the series, but there's probably another 4 or 5 or 6 that are going to come up this year. So what's great about the series is, while we've written the first section and the last section of the book, there are 3 sections, the second section has all these stories from normal people like you and me out there, where they talk about what their experiences, profound experiences, have been. And this one is chock full of incredible stories from everyone from Wayne Dyer to Lori Niemer. I mean, a lot of the writers in this book are people who themselves are involved in powerful healing practices and teaching ministries in order to raise the consciousness of the planet. And at the back of the book, not only does she put their names on the front, but at the back of the book, there's summaries about the different writers in here. And it really is amazing. It reads kind of like who's who, because there's astonishing teachers in the book. I also put a whole series of glossaries in the back of the book, because over the centuries, of course, the Catholic Church has, blessed the teachings about angels, and they have codified them into different forms, saying, what is the archangel for the Kabbalah, for example? That would be Jewish. What are the archangels for the days of the week or for the 12 months of the year? If you're working on, let's say, healing, what angels do you call on? If you're working on creativity, what are some of the angels you can call on? So this book doesn't have illustrations, unlike the rest of my books, but I've already had several people read it and call me up and tell me that literally they could just feel this divine emanation coming off of it. And I always give credit to the angels because of that, and that they had read it and that it really just opened up these inner portals within them to open up their own practice and dialogue and build a relationship with their own guides. And that, of course, is the real reason that I chose to write this book. Neil, are you where you can, are you online? Are you on a bit?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay now?
I can just hear you fine. I think our introduction was a little spotty, but hopefully maybe we can redo that and put the two together, because you're always such an eloquent speaker.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that and reformat this video. But hopefully, I'm coming across okay now. I just wanted to ask, based on what you're saying. I've heard a lot of people have said to me, as I've been into all this information, that they incarnated straight from the angelic realm, right? And my understanding is that we've incarnated many different places, and some of us, including the angelic realm. But you also said that these beings are non-physical. So can you kind of reconcile all of those concepts?
Yeah, what I've seen is that, every soul has a spark of God. We all start off with that. And that we all go into some level of divine service in those higher realms before we start getting into the dualism of the mental body and the emotional body and the physical world and all the crazy stuff we have to deal with down here. So as we move through each dimensional level, the frequency drops. In other words, the higher we go, the faster the frequency, to the point that at the higher levels is just complete isness and beingness. It's like stillness that encompasses all things with radiance. But as we come down, the frequency level begins to drop, and we begin to slow. The atomic rate of the atoms begins to densify, basically. So when you're, let's say, a light being, at every dimensional level, the laws change. Down here in the third dimension, we have about 48 laws of physics that we are having to work within. If you move up to the astral plane, we only have 24. The fifth dimension, we only have 12. The sixth, the seventh, 3 laws. So obviously some of the things we would consider to be magic down here, like levitation or walking through walls or telepathy, it's business as usual in the fourth dimension. And certainly, let's say in the fifth dimension, teleportation, you simply think where you want to be and you're able to be there. So as we move up and we're not as constricted by these physical laws, of course, through consciousness and choice, we can change our appearance. This is true in the astral world. You ask people who have had near-death experiences, who encountered loved ones who have passed over. Those loved ones may have died at the age of 84, but they appear to the person that's visiting the other side as if they're 30 or 35, or they're in the prime of life. So once we're in the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension, we can change our shape. So angels in the, let's say, that are primarily parked in the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and so forth dimensions in service to the evolution of the souls who are incarnating in on these various planets, and we are among them. They can certainly choose to densify their vibrating atoms at will, appear as a man or as a woman, appear as a nurse in a hospital, or as a person that comes to change your tire. They can take any form that they need. All they have to do is, through consciousness, they choose the form in the light body form, okay, that they need to appear to that person, and then they densify the atoms and it might be for 15 minutes or for 2 hours or for 1 day, in order to pick you up on the side of the road and take you to a filling station. And then all they have to do is choose to undensify the body, the atoms, and the physical body that we would see with our physical eyes vanishes. They are still there in the vibrational atomic structure of the fourth dimension or the fifth dimension or the sixth dimension or the seventh dimension. But just like most of us can't see ghost. I mean, what's a ghost? Ghost is a person who their soul left their body, but and their body went back into the earth, but instead of their soul going on into the fourth or the fifth dimension and the various levels of heaven, the soul got stuck down here for some reason. Maybe they were scared, or they had buried treasure in the backyard, or they had unfinished business. But those are souls that we're looking at, the astral shell that's stuck down here. But most people can't see ghosts. I mean, once in a while, but not most of the time. So most of us don't see the angels, but the angels can certainly choose to take physical form whenever they wish. They normally don't do that unless there's an emergency or we invite them. It'd be fun to have them just appear in all their gorgeous glory in the middle of our living room and go, oh my gosh, an angel. But imagine how that could change the trajectory of your life. Each of us has free will, and each of us has made a soul contract before we ever came into this life for what we wanted to do. And each of us has lessons that we must take. We must overcome, whatever it is, anger, fear, ego in some form. We must find courage. We must learn to work with others. We must learn how to open our hearts in love. We must learn to forgive. I mean, there's a lot of things we have to learn down here, right? So they can encourage, they can have the book fall off the shelf and hit you on the head, or, the best friend call when you're depressed and invite you to something that will uplift your spirits. But they work through synchronicity, and they try to work invisibly behind the scenes and let you take your test in life and overcome your challenges for yourself. And this is how you build your strength, your strength as a soul. This is how all that happens. So
Tricia, are you saying that beings in the angelic realm can descend, materialize on Earth as humans to, give some insight, help us out, and then dematerialize back to the angelic realm? I think that's what you're saying. So does that mean that individuals aren't descending from the angelic realm for an entire lifespan on Earth? Does that not occur?
Yes, that totally does occur. So when people say, gosh, you feel very angelic to me, it can really talk about the fact that we have certain alignments on the inner planes. Some people have been, let's say, through the fairy kingdom. We've all met people that just felt like, that they were like little fairies. There's wonderful high creatives and, gemstone energies around them and all of that. We've all met people that felt like that they were, had maybe come in through the dolphin kingdom or the whale kingdom. They're just live by the ocean and the sea, and they're happy like a dolphin. We've all met people that feel like that they are much more sort of physical, cloddish, land humans, okay? And they're not very awake, we've met people that have different alignments. When the soul begins its journey into these worlds, because ultimately our mission is to become fully enlightened and to emanate out the essence of God, we go through many experiences. We partake in the life of trees as devic spirits or plants. This is why some people have strong alignments with the oak or with the elm or with certain plants. We have experiences in the animal kingdom. This is why people feel connected with the lion or the eagle or the hawk or the elephant, because you as a soul coming through the billions of years of your experience may have had those experiences. For example, I mean, there's a lot of animals I really love, so I'm sure I took my time. And eventually we come into the human kingdom. But what happens when people have, let's say, spent between lifetimes, sometimes there'll be 1,000 years between lives. There used to be a lot longer, hundreds of years. Now there's so many people on the planet that people are reincarnating very quickly. But when we say that about someone from the angelic realm, it's literally that the soul itself has a purity to it that feels angelic, and that perhaps that person, through all their evolution, has just recently come into the human realm. Or perhaps they've been incarnating, let us say, in the fourth dimension or the fifth dimension, in a much purer expression of who that soul really is. And they look at planet Earth and they say, what a beautiful planet. We're at a time of great transition on the planet. I want to be of assistance. I will come in as one of those humans. Now, maybe they've been here 6 times before, 2 times before, or 30 times before, or maybe they've never been here at all. But there is a frequency that they are carrying that is different from the others. And you find the same thing with some of the star childs, there are star children. You have people who you can feel that their energy is more celestial, or it's more mental, or it's more warlike, or it's more unity consciousness. And these are different star nations that we come from. And this is like America, the melting pot. Earth is like the melting pot. There are people who've come in from all different lineages of soul experience. But there are definitely people like myself that have strong connections with the angelic realm. I also have strong connections with the star beings, the higher dimensional star beings, with the masters and with the divinities. So the longer we, let us say, grow, learn, evolve, and awaken, the more complete we become as God realized or self-realized beings. And in time, our experience may bring us full circle into all of these arenas. Right now, of course, we're in the human body, and we have a beautiful planet before us, and a planet that wants to move up in frequency. And you can see some of these books, by the way, Neil's showing on the screen. The ones that are out at this point, I think, of course, my angel book, I think Guides is coming out next. Ascension will come out after that, I believe. The Ancestors, that looks really fun. But the meditation book is out. The nature book is out, and the animals book, this one's the one by Steve Farmer. So these are the 3 that have come before my book. And then here's Neil's book. I think that's going to come out towards the end of the year, and I'm sure that's just going to be wonderful. And Oscar Meadow Casada is a dear friend of mine from Peru. He's doing the shamanism book, so that should be just extraordinary. Neil, did you want to say anything?
Yeah. So you've kind of shown us ways the angelic realm connects to us. What are some techniques that we can use to connect to the angelic realm?
That's a great question. First off, I think it's really a good idea to set up an altar. You can call it a prayer altar, meditation altar, whatever you want to. But what's an altar? It can be set up in your backyard on a piece of wood or a slab of stone. It can be set up in your bedroom, or a big walk-in closet if you want to. But basically, it's a place, a holy place that you are creating, a sacred place in your own environment where you can go and close the door and be alone. On the altar, it's good to put representations of air, earth, fire, and water, which sounds very shamanistic, and perhaps it is, but this is the paint box of God. Everything is made of either air, earth, fire, or water in some proportion. So you can also put a candle. So let's say for fire, you can do candles. For water, you can have a bowl of water. You could also have a mirror that is a symbol of water. You could have flowers for earth, or crystals or stones. And air, you can have a feather. there's a lot of choices, and you want to make it a living altar. You want to make it something that speaks to you, and it can change over time. You can put a beautiful scarf or a cloth over it. It can be as simple or as complicated as you want. But the whole idea is that it becomes holy for you. You can put a tapestry behind it, or a statue of Mother Mary, or Jesus, or Kuan Yin, or St. Francis of Assisi, or whoever you'd like, Buddha. He's great. So, and you want to be able to go to this place relatively. You want to teach the subconscious every day, whether it's in the morning before you start your day. It's a great time if you get up a half hour early, or in the evening, or maybe it's on your weekends. But you want to set up a daily practice to be able to, maybe you light your candle, you speak from your heart. That's the most important thing. Always speak from your heart, not your head, your heart. Okay. So you don't have to be enlightened to do this. So you could say, and however I always call in the light. So for me, I go into the heart, I go into my third eye, my crown, I send a beam of light up to, we can say the sun, or the great central sun, or the solar lords, or the angels. I call this energy down like a column of white light. I ground it through my body down into the center of the earth. So the whole time I'm in that prayer or meditation, I'm feeding the earth with the light energy. And there's an exchange going on between, heaven and the earth. And so I send the grounding rods, golden grounding rods, down to the center of the earth and anchor them in the molten core, the sun, however you want to conceive of it. And then I pull the energies up. So there's energy coming down, there's energy going up. Okay. So what's happening here is I'm awakening the circuitry of my body. I breathe into the heart, I put my attention on the third eye, and I begin to speak from my heart. Now you can speak as a prayer. You can rant or rave if you're upset. God doesn't mind at all. And then when you're completely done, whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or 20 minutes, you want to sit and receive. That's the other part of it. It's like a phone conversation. The first part is when you talk to the divine, and the second part is when you listen. Now, when you call in that column of light, you want to invite in your higher self, who's a very wise, profound being, even though the human self is often not. You want to invite in your angels and guides, important. And then you can invite in any other, let us say, divinities or deities or masters that you feel comfortable with. And I named some: Jesus and Buddha and Mary and Kuan Yin. These are some of the ones that we know about. But, there's Pythagoras, there's Thoth, there's Isis, there's Horus, there's, Athena. There's many, many beings who have strived for higher consciousness and become teachers to humanity. Totally depends on you. Or you can just call in your angels. And you can also ask, you can say, I want to call in my personal angels, and then the highest vibrational angels that I can work with at this time. And over time, when you begin to work and go to spiritual school in the inner planes, your teachers will change, just like they did when you were in grammar school and high school. 1 year you have one teacher, the next year you graduate. 3 years later, you graduate to another teacher. And so this is really how it is even in the spiritual world. These teachers come to bring lessons to us, wisdom and sharing, sometimes creative knowledge, or knowledge around your purpose in this lifetime, or to awaken within you those things that you agreed to before you ever came into this lifetime. But they must be invited, because they work through invitation. And you always want to thank them. As they say, an attitude of gratitude is a very important thing. When I go into a parking lot, for example, I'll be like, manifest a closer parking place. And I always thank the angels for doing it. And while they don't serve to be thanked, I'm sure they appreciate it, because most people don't even know they're there.
Right. And the gratitude is almost more for yourself, right? To be in that place of receiving and openness and just like awe of creation, rather than taking things for granted.
Absolutely right. That place, you remember Jesus said, except as you become as little children, you cannot see this kingdom of heaven. I think what he was talking about was many things: the purity of children, the heart energy. They just want to love and be loved. And also, as you said, Neil, the awe. instead of just, taking everything for granted, being in this place of discovery and openness and um, uh, awe at the mystery and the wonder and the beauty and the miracle of life. Now, that white gold column you're going to pull around you, I want to really emphasize the importance of that. There are many incredible, loving spiritual beings in the higher worlds. But there are also some mischievous beings out there that could cause you trouble. So when you do that prayer, go to the heart, third eye, crown, send that beacon of light up and pull it down around you. And I always say, I literally have a prayer where I'll say, at this time, in this moment, I call in the energies of the white gold energies of the Christ light, of the divine Father and Mother, of the Buddhic energy. I call for these divine beings of light to send this column of light down around me in 360 degrees in all dimensional levels and realities. And that's an important thing to say, in 360 degrees in all dimensional realities. And that, what it does is it literally puts me in this beautiful force field so that nothing that doesn't vibrate at that beautiful light energy can enter my field. And this is a good thing to get in the habit of doing every morning. You can do it in the shower. Okay, you can do it before you go into work, or if you're going into a crowded place where there's a lot of ambient energy. Anytime you feel afraid, you can do it. And call in. It's like you're setting up a tea party, and then you're going to invite who you want to the tea party. Always include your angels. And angels, of course, are great, but just so that you know, they're also beautiful masters and spiritual teachers at many levels, and they each have different things to bring forward, and depending on where you are in your evolution and what you need is what will come forward. But you can be assured that there's always one or two or three angels that are assigned. Every single person has at least one, and most people have two, and many times people will have three guides. And they may come in at different periods in your life, but you don't come into this world alone, even though you might not see the guide, although there are children that see them and will talk to them. And then they're usually told, oh, that's just an imaginary friend. So they stop talking to them usually around 5 or 6. But many, many children see and feel their guides just as I did when I was a child. And I talk about that in my first book, Dialogues with the Angels. And in fact, in this book, the Angels book, I have 2 stories of mine. And one of the very first ones in the second section is the one where I talk about how I first met an angel in the forest when I was 8 years old, and how he began to teach me about the great chain of being that comes down from the higher dimensions to eventually form the physical world. So that story and many other amazing stories are in this book.
Tricia, could you share maybe a couple of the stories that are in the book and let people know about how it's structured? Because this is not like a regular book. We have other people basically sharing their testimonies about experiences with angels.
Yeah, the book has 3 sections. So in the very first section, we talk about what angels are and how we can experience them and how they show up in the world. And I also give some of the history of angels, and I talk about some of the most famous accounts about the angels. For example, most people don't know that George Washington, when he was in that very hard winter at Valley Forge, literally had 2 angels, a female angel of prophecy, appear to him, and at the same time, I think it was either Michael or Gabriel that came. And so this angel gave 3 prophecies for the United States. She told him, at that point he was fighting the British, and we did not know whether or not, I think this was 1777. So the Constitution had been signed in 1776, but he could have lost that battle, in which case America would be owned by the British. And so this angel told him that we would face 3 great conflicts: the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and then a war that has not happened yet. And that would be the hardest war of all, but that we would prevail, and that the light of this nation would not go out. So that was very powerful. I talk about the story of Joan of Arc, who many of you have heard of her, of course, but you might not have known that her teacher was Michael. And Michael was the patron saint, actually, of France at that time. So she would have been familiar with Michael, but she was also taught by two female saints. Michael came first. He introduced the two saints, said, study and live this pure life, and then I'll come back. And he did when she was about 17 or 19. And that's when she was directed to help the French end what was essentially 100 years war, 100 years of fighting between Britain and France. And that's really, imagine how many people died in 100 years. It needed to end. So there was some celestial intervention. I talk about these Russian cosmonauts that were all atheists because they had not been raised to believe in God or anything. And when they were, 7 of them, when they were on their space shuttle, they saw these 80-foot long gigantic angels that were like all golden beings of light with, they said the wings were as wide as a 747 airplane. And first 3 of them saw it, and then there were about 2 weeks later, others had joined the crew, and they saw it. So 7 in total. And of course, it as you can imagine, this blew their minds and changed their whole point of view. And this was kept secret by the Soviet Union, but there was someone who defected from the Soviet Union who, a scientist, and he knew all about this report, and he brought this information forward. So those are 3 amazing stories. There's another one about 9/11, about an FBI agent who literally saw all these angels circling over the buildings. And I have no doubt that they were assisting those 3,500 souls that were taken down in the World Trade Center, not to mention all the other people who died. They were assisting them because, all those souls had to pretty much cross over, and they were in trauma. It wasn't like a natural death. I talk about a whole nother a story that happened in World War I called the Battle of Mons. And this was when, the Germans had invaded, I think it was France, and the French were fighting, it was Belgium. The French were fighting and the English were fighting for the Belgium towns and villages that were being pretty much desecrated. And they were outnumbered, the British, 5-1 by the German army. And they had put themselves before this one village trying to prevent the Germans from taking it. And of course they were losing, and they were just being bombarded with aerial artillery and so forth and so on. And these angels appeared, and they were huge angels with wings. And the Germans saw, like 10 times more British people, as if, and it allowed the British to basically retreat and escape because they were cut off from behind the lines and they were fighting on the front of the lines. And they were not only all these British people who saw this, but also after the war, there were all these Germans that were there that reported what they had seen as well. And they all saw these huge angels. So there's a lot of amazing stories in this book. And, if you want to know more, just pick it up, go to SacredStories.com, and or you can get it from Amazon if you want to. And in about a week, you'll be able to get it from my site, which is TriciaMcCannon.com.
Beautiful, Tricia. Thank you so much. And go ahead and hold your book up one more time. I'm just going to do one more screen share here just to show everybody.
It's really simple. It just says angels. And I love the subtitle, Personal Encounters with Divine Beings of Light. And there are some amazing stories in here from all sorts of people who, like you and me, have had their own miraculous things. There's stories about people whose husbands were dying in hospitals and angels appeared. There's stories about people who were in a car on an icy winter slope with their children, their little children, trying to get home, and these men came out of nowhere and helped them push the car up the hill where all these other cars had not been able to get up the hill. There's one about a mother who, has, 3 children by her side, and her little child's about to be hit by a car, and an angel comes. There's some really great stories in here. There's one about the burning of Notre Dame, the Cathedral of Notre Dame, and literally the person who writes the story sees all these angels over lighting that cathedral, telling her that, they pay attention to what's going on down here on earth. And again, unless we invite them, they can't interfere with our free will. So I remind you again and again, I even have a meditation here to really help you make that connection for yourself with the angels, and in the last third of the book.
Amazing. So everybody, please do go ahead and check out Tricia McCannon's new book, part of the Common Sentience series. I am also part of it. Some amazing content in there, some amazing information. And just the fact that we get to share stories, and it's a collaboratory effort. It's not just one speaker presenting to you. There's multiple people. And the whole purpose of this series is really to show you how this other world, this other dimension, this realm of paranormal is really normal. And we're making the paranormal normal. We're bringing this awareness, grounding it to earth, because this is the information that's going to create the foundation for what's to come in a new reality as we start opening up perceptions and realizing that the limited bandwidth of frequency we've been experiencing is exactly that. That's just a limitation. We're now about to expand out of that. And Tricia has been doing incredible work, and really, I would say, an expert in this just because of her connection with the angelic realm for so long, and just writing and being inspired by them. So go ahead and check it out, SacredStories.com. And that's it from us here. Tricia, do you want to say any final words before we close out?
Neil, I loved how you put that the reason that Sacred Stories has done this amazing series is to, in fact, let us know that we are not alone in having these experiences. They're happening with people all around us. And a lot of times people don't know who to share them with. But what you discover in this series, not only from the amazing authors that she has chosen, but from all the contributing authors, that these abilities to tune in to, whether it's angels or shamanism or nature or meditation or animals, and have these profound experiences, is something all of us have if we only realize that it's perfectly normal, and thus the name Common Sentience.